Hi everybody, it's Joe Dungan with a new feature on Joe Dungan's talk show. It's called Joe Acts Like a Little Bit of a Jerk. Something exciting is happening, but I can't tell you what. And that was a new segment called Joe Acts Like a Jerk. That's true, actually. Something exciting is happening. I can't say what it is, but I will be allowed to. And I don't like it when people do that, but it's on my mind. And I always want to give both of my fans something new to talk about. Because the fact is, my life is not exactly an amusement park. It's not fun and exciting. There's a lot of walking going on. You can get stale popcorn, but it's otherwise not thrilling most of the time. So I'm glad I can throw out this little nugget for you, and I'll tell you more as soon as I can. My guest this week is Susan Ruth. What a doll. What a sweetheart. She is multi-talented. She is a poet. She's a singer-songwriter. And we get into some really philosophical stuff here about the nature of performance and creation and so forth. And at one point, about 17 minutes in, she gives me an answer to a question, and I'm just kind of staring at her. Not my finest moment as an interviewer, but I was a little bit tired that day. And I'm like, suck it up, Dungan. Get on this. You schedule this. Do it. Have a little caffeine if you have to. Just do the damn interview already. Come on. You want to do this interview. So what are you doing? Just get on it. And then it ends with a stunning story, a jaw-dropping story, and literally my jaw is open as she tells the story, which I had already heard a few days earlier, of how her music career, which she was on the cusp of superstardom, and it literally got taken away from her. I don't mean things fell through. I mean it was awful. And what's amazing about that isn't just that it happened, but the way she dealt with it, which we will get to in part 2 next week. Yeah, it's a two-parter. We talk about a lot of good stuff. Please enjoy this part 1 of this interview with Susan Ruth. Susan Ruth, thank you so much for joining the Joe Dungan Talk Show experience. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. This is it's different than the first time I've seen your show, which was live and in person.
Yes.
With curtains and things.
Yeah, things changed. We had a live show with a monologue and everything, and you were there the night that our friend Russ Woody was a guest.
That's right. That was the night I met you.
Yeah, that was the night we met, and that was I was just watching that episode again. We have it recorded, and wow, different times. That's different discussion. Wow, that's just it all doesn't it kind of seem like I was at a small gathering yesterday, and I'm kind of like, doesn't it seem like this was all just a weird dream?
Mm-hmm. A
And now
fever
people
dream.
we're
Yeah.
at restaurants again and things, and I'm kind of going, what did we do for the last 14 months? And I don't know, did you accomplish a lot? Because I didn't.
I did. I got a lot of stuff done. I mean, I had to because I'm a creative and that's how I survive. So I just changed tacks on how I found people or followed up with people that had been people that I would reach out to in the past I hadn't talked to for a while, and just said, hey, I need to eat dinner. What can I do for you? That sounds vaguely whorish, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, depending on how you define these things, but artists do refer to themselves with that term sometimes. So,
Yeah.
and that we can get into that philosophical discussion too. But
Well,
let
I
us
have no
start.
problem with sex work. I did not trade sexual favors for sandwiches or anything. Not that there's
Okay.
anything wrong with that. I get it. But I went inward. I did a bunch of writing, accomplished tasks there, dusted off some of my poetry to start putting that together because I want to put out a little poetry book because poetry is really popular. I don't think you knew that.
You could buy, I'm sure, a sandwich with a good poem.
I have a time machine at my house and I go back to the 1800s and that's where I sell my poetry books.
Yeah, I don't know how poets. I'd like to interview a professional poet, like a poet laureate or something, and say, how exactly do you make a living? I want to interview.
By being a poet laureate. Being a poet laureate is akin to back in the day getting the king to throw some shillings at you for it's the same idea.
How many poet laureates do we have in this country?
Several.
Wow.
I mean, living and dead. How many presidents have there been? There's at least that many. Right?
Wow. That's
I mean, actually, that's a lie. I'm talking as if I know better. I don't know when the program started, but it has to have been around for a long time. Sounds like something that Roosevelt would have come up with, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, I'm just telling tales.
the career options that are before us, it's amazing. So
I'm a big fan of poetry. I have tons of poetry books that I delve into. I really, really enjoy it. But I liked it ever since I was a young kid. So the depressive young kid who was the creative artist type that nobody understands me except for Sylvia Plath and Dorothy Parker and Ted Hughes.
wow,
Yeah.
that's a tough way to grow up if those are your role models.
Oh, still to this day, love Dorothy Dorothy Parker. She's the queen of snark, genius mind, quick-witted, and has one of the best responses to. She was on that show. Wait, I think it was in the 50s where you had to make a pun on the spot. And
is it for the word horticulture?
It was, yeah. You can
go ahead and tell it. I know it, but it's
lead
brilliant.
a horticulture, but you can't make her think.
Yeah.
That's genius, without missing a beat. So I grew up in a punny family. I had an appreciation for that from a young age. I know Oscar Wilde says it's the lowest form of humor, but I love it.
You're spoken like a guy who couldn't think of any. So you describe yourself as a depressed kid. Were you a depressed child?
Yeah, I would say yes, in that I never felt like I fit in anywhere. Too smart for my own good. I didn't understand kids. They made no sense to me. I liked adults much better, hung out with adults. My 11th birthday, I tell this story all the time, my 11th birthday party, I presented my mother with a list of who I wanted to come, and they were all over the age of 35. But that's the kind of people I like talking to. Kids never made sense to me.
I remember watching the Brady Bunch wanting to hang out with the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their behind the scenes lives were even more interesting.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and I'm the youngest child, and by the time I was really hitting stride of childhood, both my brothers were grown up and out. So it leaves you with the only child scenario as well, where you're coming up with imaginative things. And I got in trouble a lot. I lit my room on fire a couple times.
Wait a minute. A couple of times?
Not in an arsonist way, but in a science experiments, seeing what chemicals mixed well. And I was teaching myself about the difference between vapor and liquid and solid. And in that, I had a bit of a mishap. And these things happen. I never broke a bone. I chipped a big toe playing soccer.
These things happen. They don't happen to just anybody, Susan.
Well, I don't know. Left to their own, their own experimenting in your room with whatever products you find around the house could lead to forest fires, is all I'm saying.
Did you? Oh, yeah. I went through a phase. One night in the garage, I was bored, and I held up a lighter to pretty much anything with an aerosol can.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You could buy all sorts of flammable stuff coming out of aerosol cans. I'm surprised I didn't blow my hand off.
It's amazing. I mean, that's the thing about our generation of kids or whatever, is that they basically was trial by error. And if you survived your childhood, you get your shiny little Darwin Award and you move to the next level.
Yeah. And we've made it this far.
Yeah. So far, so good. Knock on.
At what age did you start? Did you start with poetry first or songs first?
I used to write poems incessantly. So definitely poetry first. And in fact, when I wrote my first song, my mother had dared me to enter a songwriting contest. I said, I have no idea how to write a song. And her response was, well, you write poems all the time. It's not that much different. So I took the challenge, but I had been singing, but I was in a professional touring choir. So I was singing the Ave Maria things and the whale song and the, all that stuff, singing all the different languages and touring around. But that's like opera practically. It's not.
Now, is that true about songwriting and poetry? Are there similarities?
Definitely. And screenwriting. I think they're all similar. Poetry is a bit, depending on the style of poetry, right? It's a bit more loosey-goosey perhaps. And it's not as repetitive as, say, a song would be. But it follows a story. There's a pattern to it.
So what happened with this song contest that you entered?
Oh, I got honorable mention. It was real long. It was a 4.5, 5, 6 minutes. I don't know. It was so long. I got a t-shirt for honorable mention. But what was interesting about that is it really begun my dive off the deep end. I went to my friend and said, hey, I kind of like this songwriting thing. You want to write a couple songs together? So we did. His name's Kurt. I sadly cannot remember his last name. I tried to recall this the other day for an interview, and I'm so sorry, Kurt. I have no idea how to find you. I don't know your last name anymore.
How old were you at the time?
Just graduated. And I performed the couple songs. We went down to the open mic night at a place called Madison's in West Seattle. And I was terrified, but I did it anyway. And the owner, Bill Pritchard, came up to me and said, that was really great. If you come back and do a full show, you can earn tips. If you get a good response, I'll have you as a regular act. And I said, I only have the 2 songs. And he said, you better start writing. And that was the moment.
You were 18.
I was 20-ish.
Okay.
I graduated from college, 21, somewhere in there.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry. I should have been more specific.
It's quite all right, quite all right. So you start plowing ahead on this, and are you thinking, okay, this could be a career, or this could be just let's just make tip money and see how this goes? I mean, how
Well, I had the show, and it was packed, and I made somewhere upwards of $400 in tips.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I mean, my family was certainly there, but it wasn't all my family. And the feeling I had all through my terror was also joy. Sometimes those go, hold hands as they jump off a cliff. So
yeah,
I just kept going, and I think it was a good 1.5 years before I was able to go into Madison's without immediately having to go poop in the bathroom out of nerves. And I got to tell you, years later, I came back to visit Seattle, and my nephew was playing there with his band, which was pretty cool. And I went to go see, and I walked in, and at that time, it wasn't Madison's anymore, but I walked in. The minute I crossed the threshold, I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. My body remembered that, oh, we're in Madison's, panic time, go empty yourself, so wild. Sorry for all your listeners. That's really a Patreon comment.
That's quite all right. That's totally okay. We can
Girls poop too, is all I'm saying.
Girls poop too, everybody.
It's true.
So how long did that?
We just do it. We do it like this.
Now that I did not know.
It's true.
Now does that nervous feeling, did it ever go away?
I gotta say that regardless of how far I've come, the accolades I've had, all that stuff, I still get that nervous. I don't necessarily have to go to the bathroom, but I do get that nervous butterfly feeling. And I do think that perhaps that's a good thing. If that were to go away and I was just like, meh, just another whatever, that would be a bummer. So
I know what you mean, but at the same time, you don't want to be terrified because it kind of messes you up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not terrified anymore, but it's still that jittery. I always say it's around the 1.5 songs in, if I'm performing music, about 1.5 songs in, where I get my sea legs. But that first song and a half, I am feeling like the most ridiculous poser on the planet. What am I doing here? That kind of thing. So it takes a minute to get your sea legs.
Isn't that wild? Because you've been singing a while.
Long time.
And you still.
I'm 4,000 years old, so.
Well, you look great.
Thanks. I do Pilates. No,
That's
I really don't do. I want to do Pilates. There's a place in my neighborhood. All those machines, they make me a little bit scared and a little bit, ooh, that looks exciting.
They do look a little medieval, don't they?
They do, but in a fun way.
Different strokes, different folks.
That's right.
But isn't it odd that the nerves still are there despite the muscle memory of having performed all these times?
Well, your brain doesn't know the difference. The brain just sees, I think you get used to a feeling and it lessens over time, but the brain still registers what it all means and makes sure, and your body has memory. That's that muscle memory and things like that.
The reason I ask is sometimes when I do stand up, I still get some nerves, but a lot of times I don't. And I'm
That's
going,
good.
yeah, I guess it's good, but to your point, I don't know how much I care, but that's important also. I think for me, some of my best work happens when I don't care. And I'm just, okay, I'm just going to go and barf out the words, and because I'm in the moment and I'm not thinking about what if, what if, what if. And
I think it's not that you don't care. I think it's that you have a moment of fearlessness. Because I've been in that situation where I've had to jump into something and I'm like, it doesn't make a difference, like, whatever. And that's a moment of fearlessness because you do care deep down. We all do, right?
yeah, you're right. Care
Sort
is
of like tricking your brain or something.
exactly. It is this weird trickery where you have to, I guess, like when you're skydiving, you need the instructor to sort of grab you and it's like, no, it's going to be fine, and go out. No, on a more cosmic level,
No skydiving.
no, that's way down my list. That might be last on my bucket list,
Mm.
just in case. Get everything else done, say my goodbyes, and then I'll give it a try when I'm 90. To your point about caring and not caring, I bring this up because I have a friend who, when he became an actor years ago, he went on something like 27 auditions and didn't get anything. And he kept asking his agent, "What am I doing wrong?" And they said, "Nothing. You're not doing anything wrong. Just keep doing what you're doing. These weird streaks happen. Don't worry about it." And then his girlfriend died in a car accident, and he just, gave the finger to life, and he said, "This sucks. Life isn't fair." And then booked, 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 booked. He just landed all these things all of a sudden. I mean, do you think there's some sort of cosmic connection between the inner world and the outer world like that?
Yeah, I think she either helped him from the other side, he made a pact with the devil and took out his girlfriend, or he realized that none of this really matters. It's all ridiculous. But that's part of fearlessness also. And he had a surge of adrenaline, right? That surge of sorrow, which is adrenaline, pushed him into just being like, fuck it.
Interesting.
But that's you jumping out of a plane at 90. Though I know 90-year-olds and they want to live to be 91. So it still wouldn't get me out of the plane.
100 then. But then the fear thing, though, keep in mind when it comes to getting cast in something, you're at the mercy of the director and the casting director and the producers.
Sure.
So how do you, it's so strange how that moment suddenly started flipping switches in these other people. And I've never been able to make that connection.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. It would be hard for me without meeting the person. It's easy to be flippant, and I don't mean any disrespect from the fact that his girlfriend died, obviously. But everyone responds to things differently. He could have responded to that tragedy and shut down completely, and never even attempted it before. Death is a curious thing. It makes people either lean into it or they run screaming the other way. You give me that look a lot, Joe. I just wanted to.
Do I? I don't mean to.
No, it's okay.
I don't mean to. That's just a very heavy thing. I'm kind of going, okay, they don't teach you this moment in interview school. How do I handle it? But that's fine. Now, when you were, at what point did you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to become a professional singer? And how did that journey begin? Were you working full time in Seattle and still doing the nighttime coffee houses?
Yeah. I was working for sure, and doing it on the weekends or on Thursday nights or whatever. And again, in the beginning, I had a lot of stage fright. So it took a while to really, but I knew I was writing decent songs because people around Seattle were starting to pay attention. And I was starting to get reviews that were extraordinary, which was lovely. I was touring. People wanted to hear me perform. They'd show up, which was nice. And so I thought, well, okay, I guess the next logical step is to make a record. So I did that. I sold my book collection that I had, and had some credit card money, set aside, and I made a record. And I went to Nashville to do it and made that record, and then came back to Seattle, and made my next record in Seattle. And you just keep going, I mean, I think that's really part of the battle with anything in life, is just you wake up and you do it again. And you keep doing it until it doesn't feel like the thing you're supposed to be doing anymore. Or it feels like this is a good thing, but I also want to do this other thing over here. And my biggest advice with that is don't let anyone tell you if that's what moves you and what feels good. You know, there are plenty of people that say, no, just do the one thing and do it well. Don't do all these things. So, you know, but they don't know. They're not you.
Right.
You have to do what feels right for you. If it's not right, you're going to figure it out pretty quickly. And then you'll adjust.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's important also, is to keep adjusting. And I tell you, the thing that really saved me a lot of therapy was a few months ago, I discovered the term multi-potentialites.
Mm,
It's a woman named Emily Wapnick figured this out. She said some people were just born to do a lot of different things. You know, you're not supposed to be Tiger Woods. You're not supposed to be, you know,
yeah.
Wayne Gretzky. You're not supposed to just do that one thing.
Yeah.
So that made me feel a lot better. And I think you're right. I think you're going to have different skill sets and different interests, and I think it's normal to sort of bounce around and try different things. I mean, look at the actors who make their own movies. They're not
Yeah.
acting. I mean, come on.
Well, and you have to, you don't have to, but it helps to get to a point where you don't really care what other people think about you. And I mean, you do, because everybody does on some level, but not to the point where it's debilitating.
Yeah.
Not to the point where you're not willing to just do something because fuck it. I mean, everything around us, it's all on some level complete and utter bullshit, right? So what's the difference?
Right. And then once you start thinking about that, then the trick is you got to ask yourself, okay, then why do anything? And the answer is do it for the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, right.
Because in the cosmic level, nothing we're doing matters. So we do it because you enjoy it. And
maybe don't do anything is the right answer for some people. I mean, there are people that check out. That was the right answer for them. I mean, it devastates everybody that's left behind, but for whatever reason, I don't have the answers to those mysteries, of course.
well, then this interview's over.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure everything out in the moment. I can't say that I've never been in a place where I thought I could just check out. That sounds easier. But I have the luck and the understanding that there's always tomorrow. There's always next week. And so that keeps you going in its own way. It keeps me going. I don't really have those feelings now, but certainly growing up, I did.
Feelings about what? Checking out?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like how dark
I often say anyone that's never contemplated checking out that doesn't seem normal to me. That seems extraordinary. Those people are unicorns to me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not the happiest guy. Maybe you've noticed. Whether a particularly dark period when I was about 16 where, that crosses your mind. Of course, when you're a teenager, you're so hormonal, you don't think straight anyway. So
that's true. Hormones are a pain in the ass, but also everything is a choice. Truly, everything is a choice. Whether you decide to wake up or not is a choice. Whether you decide to eat that sandwich or the soup, that's a choice. Whether you decide to love this person or not, that's a choice. We had a choice to make this conversation. So that's just what life is. And it's exhausting to have to make all these choices all the time.
Yeah, it is. That's hence habits, because that's what makes things easy. Just like, I don't want to choose. What did I do yesterday at this time? I'll just do that.
Yeah.
So you made the one CD, you made the one album rather in Nashville. You came back to Seattle, you made a second one. So are you selling copies at shows, or are you trying to get them produced, distributed nationally? What is the procedure at this point?
Well, things like CD Baby and Amazon made it easy to do that. But this was really before, the TikTokers and the Facebookers and all that stuff. So there wasn't a social media arm to what I did. It was boots on the ground and go out and sleep on the floor of hotel rooms while my band gets to bed so that they'd stay happy, and pile into a van and drive 20 hours straight where you're speaking gibberish and having to trade out driving so you don't crash everybody. Things like that. That was real hard work for a lot of years. But I loved it. I mean, there's nothing like it. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. And it's hard to explain to someone. Maybe it's not. Maybe if I say being a creative and going after those things is no different than being a scientist, say, chasing the Higgs boson. It's the same feeling, I'm sure. I'm not a scientist that is working in the super collider, but I imagine that I've seen that documentary 5 or 6 times. I cry every time because the looks on their faces is I know that feeling. I know that feeling. It's the same feeling. It's touching God. It's touching the universe. It's agreeing with the universe. It's holding hands. It's all of that stuff. It's exciting and scary and lovely and passionate. It's all the things rolled into one, you know?
I can relate in the sense that I've had those moments as a stand-up comedian. Sometimes I'm not just reciting a joke. Sometimes there's an actual connection with the audience, and you get into a rhythm, and it's working better than it does ordinarily. It's like, yeah, everything is playing together as a team.
I think when you feel the truth of it, the capital T truth of it, different than recitation of joke or recitation of song or recitation of the periodic table, that when you find the truth of the thing, that's when everything changes. That's when you vibrate on some whole other level.
What is that like when the truth of the thing? Because for me, I don't know if maybe that's where I was at those moments, but I can't equate that with that term.
The difference between just saying a thing and being a thing. For example, when I'm performing, I'm not just singing a song. I'm not only telling the story, but I'm being the person. I feel like I am the person who is singing the song. I try on all the hats, you know. Like I'm not a stand-up comic, but I imagine that when you feel like you're really in the flow, they call it, it's when you're not just in recitation. It's when you're like, when you feel the thing, like, oh, that's the thing. How do you explain something that has a slight inexplicable nature to it?
Right. I think it's also, this goes back to nerves, because one way I got over my nerves as a comedian is I didn't go on stage thinking I have to recite words. I went on stage saying, I need to explain to you something, folks. And then, of course, your explanation is in the form of structured jokes. So that's the emotion behind the words. And I imagine a similar thing happens when you're singing. You get into that groove. Suddenly, it's not about hitting the notes. It's about, I got to tell you this pain I'm in.
Yeah. Or Joy, when you're writing a joke and you go to perform the joke, do you feel on stage that you are delivering it at them, or are you in a communion with them? Because I do think that there's a difference in that feeling as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can see that with a lot of jokes, particularly on television. It's so practiced and so rehearsed that it loses some spontaneity, which isn't the comedian's fault. I mean, the show is like, look, the 5 minutes you're doing, it's got to be letter perfect, and then we got to go sell bleach afterwards. So you can't go long, you can't go short. It's got to be so that gets really,
yeah.
Not that I've done a late night set, but from what I've seen, but yeah. And then I'm going through a phase now where I'm starting to write jokes, not about structuring a joke and then, oh, this is probably funny. It's more like, this thing bothers me. How do I phrase that as a joke? It's like acting from the inside out versus acting from the outside in. Some actors want to put on the uniform and say, what is this? What would a waiter sound like? And then some actors.
My favorite comics are people like Bo Burnham and Mike Birbiglia and Hannah Gatsby, and people that take you on a journey where they're just, or Richard Pryor, or Eddie Murphy, or whatever. They're taking you on a story journey, and it happens to be funny too. How wonderful! But it feels a communion to me. I've seen technically good comics that everybody raves about, I suppose, and they don't hit me the same.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I'm reluctant to name them because,
yeah, don't name. There's no
friends
need.
of theirs might be watching. Then I'm like, oh, geez.
And that's just me. Everybody probably responds differently to different people,
Yeah.
but the Chappelle, for example, is a great example. When I watch Chappelle, like, it feels so real. Like I'm somehow crawling into his brain and just hanging out, watching this whirlwind go by, or Robin Williams for that matter. It was like this thing just going by at Mach 10. I mean, Chappelle's way more chill because, he smokes the weed, but,
Yeah.
but I don't know. There's just all this truth to everything. And I know people like, oh, Chappelle isn't, like he says things that aren't woke culture and stuff, but it's real it's real life. He's observing how people are and how he feels and that kind of thing. Somewhere along the way, we've made it a crime to have thoughts about things where you might not have even worked out what your thoughts are. You're just working it out.
Oh yeah, where outrage has become the default right now. And
outrage is a really easy response to things.
yeah,
And some things are outrageous. I get that. Some things are.
but where the list got long fast in the last few years,
did.
didn't it? Yeah, that's where I'm going, wait a minute, this can't all be outrage inducing. Why don't we stop and ask ourselves, are you mad at your parents or are you mad at that senator? I mean, what are you really mad at here?
I just binge watched Veep, and they did a whole little couple episodes with the cancel culture stuff, and it was so well done and hilarious. That show is genius, by the way. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Man, the writing, the acting is sublime and superb, and it's just so funny and so many swear words, which I love.
That's premium cable for you.
Yeah.
So now let's get back to the career. So you're in Seattle, you're driving around 20 hours in the van, sleeping on the floor so the bass player's happy and things like that.
I didn't always sleep on the floor. That's just a good example of what you're willing to do to keep your band from bailing on you.
Well, good on you for being savvy enough to know this. But so what happens at this point? What does the band, I guess the band breaks up at a certain point?
Yeah. Well, there were incarnations along the way of band members I had one band member who said, I'm bigger than Genesis. It was like when Peter Gabriel left Genesis, and I'm going to go, how he basically started dating a woman who did not like the fact that the lead singer was a female, tale as old as time. She convinced him that he would be better off, pursuing his own stuff. And of course he never did. And it's a bummer because there was a real magic there in that incarnation. But we went through some iterations, and then I had the opportunity to make a record with Peter Gabriel's band, basically, which is phenomenal and hair blowing back moment. And there was a decision made, and all the band except for one understood that the bass player, Lizzie Damont, who's phenomenal, as was everyone in the band. I'm not taking away from anyone. It's just when you're making a record, anyone that's made a record and is in a live band, unless you're really doing like a U2 thing or a Alabama Shakes thing, whereas the band is the thing. It was me. It was my name. It was my thing. And so we made the decision. Lizzie was going to play on a couple songs, but we didn't need the rest because we had Peter Gabriel, we had Jerry Marotta, we had Tony Levin, and Tony probably gave Lizzie. Again, Lizzie is an incredible bass player. Tony Levin, one of the greatest bass players of all time, played some of Lizzie's licks. Like he was in admiration and awe of her, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
She played on it, but then and then Tony played the rest of the bass parts. But Kenny Asher, Declan Masterson, just these incredible people, and it was a hell of an experience. We recorded it in New York and in London, and they played their guts out, and I sang my guts out, and it was a really exciting time. And basically at this point in my career, everyone was saying, you're the next big thing, you're right on the precipice. And I was performing for big audiences, and I opened for the Beach Boys in Seattle, which was huge. And Mike Love said to me, did you write those songs? I said, yes, sir. He said, you keep them, those are great. I mean, that's a big deal,
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And so Lizzie and I went off to make this record. She was there for the New York leg, and then I went by myself to London because we got the parts that she was going to play on. And then I was just with the other characters that lived in London. So the New York crowd was Tony and Jerry and Lizzie and Kenny, and I'm not going to remember everybody's names, and then we went off to London, and I did the other stuff with like Abbey Road players and stuff. I got to go to Abbey Road, which was crazy.
How was all this financed?
I raised all the money between selling off things and basically maxing out multiple credit cards like an idiot. But you do what you gotta do in the moment.
I don't know that at the time.
No.
But continue the story. Is this the story that you told at lunch the other day? Okay,
Yeah.
continue with this story.
So made this record. It was incredible. And we even left room for Peter Gabriel to sing on it. But our schedules didn't align. That I think I could have died that that had happened. So I made this record, and toward the end of everything, as we were wrapping things up, my it's hard because I don't want to say what role this person played, because it wouldn't take a brain surgeon to figure out who I'm talking about, and I don't want to do that. But this person on the project ended up getting into drugs, and unbeknownst to me, because I was young and naive, and drug addicts have a really good way of hiding themselves. And this person and we had access to the monies that was paying all the different players. And I mean, there was travel, it was crazy, you know, and things were coming and going. And this person had a lot of connections, and this person was going to put me on the BBC tour. And basically this was going to be the moment. This album was the album that was going to do everything. And I was freaking ready. And then one day, all the money was gone. All of the money was gone. Luckily, you know, Gabriel's bandmates all got paid. Thank God. That would have been humiliating. But basically what happened was I was left with this great recording and no way to promote it, nothing to tour with. I was in debt up to my eyeballs, and I was totally fucked. And there was nothing I could do. I called my lawyer and my mentor at the time, and they're like, well, this person's name is all over the paperwork, because we kind of went in, you know, this was the plan, and had access, and there's no way to prove that, you know what I mean? There was no way to prove anything. And as I told you the other day, I think there was a slight maybe disbelief or something that this was possible. This person is famous, you know, all that. Anyway, so I went into a pretty deep depression, to be honest. I was,
Yeah. Well, now,
yeah.
before
And
you
then
get there,
this person called me and tried to blackmail me into more money.
oh,
They
God.
threatened to blackball me in the industry, tell people I was terrible. I mean, I stayed in touch with, I called Tony Uncle Tony. I stayed in touch with Tony and Jerry. Jerry still reaches out to me for songs, you know, if he's got an artist that he thinks I might have a good song for. So it was brutal. I did not know what to do. I trusted this person completely. I call it my Harvard education, because it was $100,000. It was a year's worth of Harvard, you know.
You've got the recordings though. Can't you do
I
something?
have no. This person, I shouldn't have gendered them. This person had all the hard drives, everything, and just vanished. So I don't have the hard drives. Because I would love to go back, and I could turn it into, I would shorten songs, because it was really a snapshot in time. It was 2004. The songs are all 4 and 4.5 minutes long. Nobody got time for that anymore. You know, songs now are 2.5 to 3 minutes long, but they were good songs, and I could have used all that. But anywho, so that was devastating. And then when I got, you know, when he tried to blackmail me, I panicked, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I was like, do I take out what do I do? I'm totally broke. I'm paying off all this debt. I had to go back to a regular job, right? Because, you know, I didn't have a regular job because I was about to go on this big, huge tour and stuff. And so, yeah, I called up again my manager and my mentor, and I said, my lawyer and my mentor. And I said, this just happened. And my lawyer said, if he does that again, hang up on him. Okay. And then this person did it to my mentor / manager's son, who had come into a whole bunch of money, and did the same thing, and was in the music industry, and did the same thing. If you don't give me X amount of money, I'm going to blackball your name all over town. And of course, they were idle threats. This person never did that to us, but they were trying to get blood from a turnip in my case, but or blood from a stone, whatever the saying is. But from my mentor's son's case, you know, actual real money could have happened. So then I think it was just like, okay. And he vanished, really. This person just vanished. And I was so traumatized.
Yeah. What
I
is
was so
what?
traumatized.
Yeah,
Mostly because I thought I was put on this earth to do this thing. I do it well. There's nothing like it. I have worked so hard. I mean, so fucking hard to get to that point. To have it just literally ripped away from you is traumatic. So I just stopped writing. I wasn't performing. I was like, well, I guess that's not what I was supposed to do with my life. You know, oh, pity party me. But I was, again, really traumatized. And so then I got a phone call. Here's the funny twist. So remember I said the person that got me really on stage and going, Bill, he ended up marrying a girl, Nancy Colton. And this was long before they got married, but Nancy Colton called me up and said, what are you doing? I said, nothing. She said, why aren't you doing music? And I said, 'cause what's the freaking point? And she's the one that said, you've got to keep going. You're too good. You can't let this stop you. I said, I'm so broke. I'm so broke. How am I ever going to do anything? And she said, just do me a favor, go to Nashville and write with my friend RJ. He worked at Curb Records. I said, fine. So I did. I went against my better judgment. I just think it's funny that Nancy, who got me off my ass when I was so depressed, ended up marrying the guy that got me started in the first place. It's just a weird twist in the
yeah, but
story.
the angels are around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting, every year, in fact, on the anniversary of my first stepping on stage, I reach out to Bill and thank him. Because I should probably do that with Nancy too, but I think she knows that. But anyway, so
you're flying to Nashville, you're thinking, well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Nancy told me to do this, but whatever. Yeah. Why bother?
That's that thing about taking leaps, and I started going back and forth. RJ and I hit it off really well artistically, and I started going back and forth to Nashville and writing with him. And he said, you should just move here. What are you doing? Just move here. What have you got to lose? And I was like, okay. So that's when I moved and I started the journey of writing for other people. And that started a whole new path for me.
So you actually had a career writing songs for other people in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a superstar career that Shane McAnally has, but excuse me, I got the Reba cut, I got Lone Star cuts, I got Americana cuts, I got, Swedish pop band cuts, things like that, yeah, so it was the logical next phase of my life. I just didn't know it yet,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But there is no roadmap for being this far from a superstardom and having it all torn away. Oh, well, the obvious next step is to be angry and depressed. That's the obvious next step.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like hyperbole that, I was on the brink of superstar, but I mean, I swept the Seattle Music Awards, that year. I had huge music magazines were writing me up in their things saying that, clear the wall for the platinum records. This is the next superstar. Like it was, and this was, remember, all before the MySpaces and this was before any of that stuff could be used to promote yourself. This was really based on hard, not that it's not hard work, but you know what I'm saying. It's like boots on the ground. They're like touring incessantly and doing all the crap that you have to endure, begging the promoter for the money they owe you, the $43 that they owe you, so you can pay $4.50 to each of your band members, crap like that, in like Podunk, Idaho, or whatever. Yeah.
So how long were you in Nashville?
13 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't until, and it's not like I didn't hold a grudge the whole time that my life didn't turn out. I still, at the back of my head, I was like, fuck, and it was sometimes hard seeing my good friends and not having a jealous bone, which I did. Of course I had a jealous bone watching them up and coming and then going off to be superstars or whatever. It's like, why them and not me? Why them and not me? And not that I would wish anything but absolute 100% success for my friends and the people I love. But I also have to be honest with myself that there was a part of me that was like, fuck, and the shadow side of me, which I could always reconcile. I knew where it came from, and I knew that it wasn't, that isn't a reality. So that's just a ghost of a memory of a thing. But what's interesting, and I think I told you this at lunch the other day, that I had a meeting with this guy about some music syncs and at a coffee shop. I'd never met him before and went to meet him, went in and sat down, and he said, "Oh, tell me about your musical life. Tell me about everything." And I told him that story, again, leaving the name out and all that. And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, he said this person's name, and I was shocked. How do you know that? And he said, "Oh, he did that to a friend of mine too." And I gotta say, in the moment, it's almost a relief to know it wasn't just me, that I
Yeah,
wasn't
I would
the only
think.
idiot that this happened to. Like, I somehow could have avoided it or something. Because you do make it, you feel like it's your fault instead of like this was a bad person that did a bad thing. And I immediately called my I think I sent an email to my lawyer, but I called my mentor / manager. I said, "You are not going to believe this. It's crazy."
Jaw dropping, am I right? Can you imagine? I mean, you think you've had adversity. Imagine working that hard on something and then having some lunatic do that, some grade A, free range, butt meat asshole just go, gimme. Seriously? So the next time you have adversity, the next time, you accidentally erase a paragraph of your novel, adversity, I can't do that. Come on. Come on. Look at this woman's sunny disposition. She got through the fire. And the way she did it is astonishing. I mean, yes, she had a friend say, start writing songs again, but something happened to her a while later that put this into proper perspective for her. And that's what makes this story amazing to me. How we think we're so in control. We think we so understand everything that's happening to us, and we don't. And sometimes it's years later when we figure it out. Sometimes we never figure it out. Sometimes we just live a life that we can trick ourselves into thinking is amazing. And sometimes we have an amazing life that we trick ourselves into thinking is miserable. And in all those instances, we could be totally wrong because we're leaning so hard on our perceptions about the way things are and the way things ought to be and what's important to us. I really should have hung this picture up.